Got our trash tonight,
Oh, boy.
so I took out one.
I got all mine out, so I don't know. Some days they pick it up on Thursday and sometimes they come on Friday. I don't know.
Well, they're kind of learning the new routes because they're new as well. Well, I had to call
Too.
to find out today is the recycle. Every other Thursday is recycle Thursday. So you put it out too, if you have any.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they all come out. Whenever they come.
And then, um, yeah, you're right. I think one of the weeks they didn't pick it up Thursday, they had Friday.
Oh,
I went out to get it and it was still full.
mm-hmm, I do too.
And then we had our old recycle bin full.
Oh,
So I put it out, nobody got it. So I just left it out there.
that's what I do.
And then one Monday I came home
Mm-hmm.
and the recycle bin was gone.
Whole thing.
The whole thing
Yeah.
was gone, full of trash. And then we put a mattress in the new one. I don't think you're supposed to do that, but we did.
That's good for you. And you gotta put it somewhere.
And we didn't want it to get all rainy and wet. We didn't want to burn it.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then I realized it was the recycle bin. In fact, we had it in there. I didn't want to get it out
Mhm.
somewhere else. It was enough trouble getting it to where it was.
How much is it?
Hey, right, that's the problem. Don't care about that. Don't care about that. Control your devices by voice.
Says Alexa.
We have that in the house, and we have that here. And, however, I don't have anything here in the church building that I can control by Alexa. What would be really nice is to be able to get one of those, Alexa-enabled thermostats.
Mm.
And then like when it's gonna be cold or really hot, and if they turn it on like at midnight, you know, late at night, but you don't have one, and they're kind of expensive. Uh, but in the house, we've got them on the plug-ins and stuff. If I say good night, it turns off the TV, all the lights in the living room, both fish tanks, and turns on, a lamp in the bedroom. And then when Donna's mother was alive, there towards the end, she kind of didn't, might need help or something. If she just said, like, I need help, it immediately told us that in the bedroom, turned on our lights, turned on the living room lights, and turned on the light in her room.
Matt's got a lot of that stuff.
I love that. When I first started, I thought I gotta get more, and I slowly added to it. It's nice because the lights on the fish tank, they go off at 10 or when I turn them on, just with my voice. I've got a whole power, I've got a whole surge protector on one plug-in that turns on all the lights in my office and stuff over the house.
Yeah.
And which is our living room too, so Donna has a lamp that she can turn on. And then when we're cooking, we have such a small kitchen that it just heats up. So I have an exhaust fan that I take all the heat out of, and I have another fan that shoves fresh air in from the living room into the, you can stand it in,
Yeah,
pull
which
it.
Donna not feeling well,
She had radiation today.
did she?
Yeah, so she's burning.
So did she start radiation this week?
Yeah, there was a problem last week, but she also, her hemoglobin is 5.1, so she's gotta go tomorrow to get 2 to 3 units of blood.
She has to feel really bad with that.
Well, just no energy, none. And, Donna, always got something she wants to do, and this, that, and the other, and, I've got all the chores that I meant to do during spring break still yet to start. Until today, I hadn't felt that good. She had radiation at 9, and I had a dentist appointment. I'm gonna get my teeth cleaned at 10, so we met for lunch. And then she went to the grocery store, and I went to CVS and Lowe's. So, it's been a day.
When Liz was in the 5, he couldn't hardly do anything.
She,
He said he found it hard to concentrate driving, so that's what I would have to drive. The 5 was just so low.
did he get units of blood and stuff? Did he get transfusion? She has trouble when he gets down that low. It's been down to 4.2 before. And she was still moving along.
Well, too, what Lance was a man,
Mm-hmm.
so that could be difference in the lows because he was technically not supposed to get below 8. So if for a woman, it may be less.
They let her go when she is at a 6 or 7, 6.5 to 7.
Mhm.
They let her leave. But that's part of liver trouble.
But he felt really bad
Mm-hmm.
when it would get down low like that.
But he's also a big man. And so,
That's what I say, it may have been somewhat different.
yeah, I think it has a lot to do with your size. You gotta oxygenate more.
Yeah.
Of your body. And I had my deep pointing, which is a medieval torture session. You have this drill thing they use that hurts, and then they have this little curly Q pointy thing that hurts. I always look forward to the end when they polish them, so that's the end.
Yeah,
That's the over with.
it's done.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I told mine. I thought I put his kids through school and
Mm-hmm.
he tortured them.
Mm-hmm. And it's not pleasant.
I didn't think so ever.
Well, last time I went, I had a tooth that they said is, you may have to lose it. I said, okay, it's in the back. Go ahead and take it. I said, no, I'm gonna send you to a guy. They sent me to this guy, I really like him, Dr. Baker, in Savannah. And he did a root canal on it. And I said, I don't have the hours it takes to do a root canal to do this. He said, it's gonna take about 30 minutes. Sure enough, it did. That's all it took. He showed me the x-ray before and after.
Okay.
He said, that's all we do. He said, we do it real quick. But did it. It already had a crown on it. So took the crown off, drilled, filled it, put the crown back on. He said, we're about finished. I said, you're kidding. Last time it took 2 days.
I was trying to think, it's been a little bit, but not that far. That I had one and it took a while. You had to go back.
Mm-hmm. I had to go back and, well, yeah, you want to see it again.
Of course, I was getting a crown, so that could have been
Mm-hmm.
along with,
Extra.
so I don't know, but it did take a short time.
Well, my problem is my dentist was back in Kentucky. And to make matters worse, he died. And so I didn't go when I first moved here. And this guy was taking new patients, and I really like him. And So that's the first thing he did. I've been with him through a move. He's got his own, it's now not just him, it's the Rosenthal Pinto Group there now. And he provides place for other dentists to be, but I've stuck with him all the time. Nice guy.
Yeah, I need to get one now. I haven't, I've been putting it out for a year and a half.
It's the Rosenthal Dental Group.
And they're,
It's a little place called Mall Terrace. It's off of Waters,
oh, okay,
near Mall Boulevard.
okay.
You know where the KFC is?
I know where Waters and
We
had to go that from one end to the other a bunch of times.
go down to Ringe.
Yeah.
Right on Waters, and you go past Eisenhower and see, well, I don't like Stevens is there, but you go past Eisenhower. And then there's a KFC, you turn right at the KFC.
I do. I do know where it is now.
It's just right
Yeah.
across that little road from the KFC. It's really good. All right, Dad, you just want to prayer we started.
Shall we pray? Our most gracious Heavenly Father, thank you for this chance to worship you that we have. Please help us to do all things in accordance to your will, pleasing in your sight. Please be with those who are unable to be with us tonight. Help them in whatever needs they have. Be with us through this service all through life. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
All right, we're in Matthew 9, the paragraph that begins in verse 10. He has forgiven this guy's sins. I'm sorry. That's before, actually. Jesus was eating with evidently Matthew and the other tax collectors and sinners. And the Pharisees saw it, and they said to the disciples, "Why is your teacher eating with tax collectors and sinners?" And when Jesus heard it, he said, "It's not those who are healthy who need a physician, but those who are sick. Now go and learn what this means. I desire compassion rather than sacrifice, for I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners." Not only were the Pharisees were more than likely not even in the house, because the Sanhedrin had made it an unclean situation that you have to go through purification rites before you ever went to temple. If you ever went into a tax collector's home, you were not supposed to be in his home. You were not supposed to eat in a Gentile's home or a tax collector's. And I want to say, although I don't want to say this with authority, I'm not really sure. It seems like I've heard somewhere that the rules about tax collectors were even worse than the rules about Gentiles. Sanhedrin kind of liked some Gentiles and didn't like some others. But they didn't like any tax collectors. Tax collectors were Jews who had chosen to ally themselves with the Romans, and they didn't like that at all. But then Jesus tells them, yes, I'm going to eat here because I am a physician in these people who are sick. He said, I desire compassion rather than sacrifice. For I did not come to call the righteous, but sinners. This is a fairly understood passage today. It would not have been understood that well in the first century. However, I don't think it's put into practice all that much. It seems like we have a lot of what I would term society churches, where people of a certain, and it doesn't have to be rich, but people of a certain standing are in churches. And I've even seen this in the Church of Christ. There's some people we have and some people we avoid, some people we don't want to have and don't want to keep in our churches. I was told this story many, many years ago, and I'm sure this would not happen today. But at one place where I was preaching, I won't even say where it was, I can remember when, and I haven't seen it ever happen here. It may happen in Savannah, but I've not heard of it. some of the colleges, Christian colleges would send their choirs around as kind of, I think it was kind of a recruiting tool. But they would sing religious songs after services. If you wanted to stay, and most people did, for about 30 minutes to an hour. At one congregation where I was preaching, and I was really very disheartened when I was there, the last time, it never happened while I was there, but the last time this happened, there was an African-American young man who was part of the choir. And he came in and sang, and the guy, like most bigots, didn't say anything while they were there. But after they left, and he wasn't going to do this, I'm sure. I did not know him, he passed away before I got there. From what his children said, so he said he wished he knew who had invited them there, he would burn their house down.
Oh,
That
a little
bothered me
extreme, huh?
immensely as well. You know, as a young boy, I can remember that congregations existed of all one race. It's just the way it was. And there is even, I have in my desk, it's old, it's from the late 90s. But before the internet and before smartphones and GPS and even MapQuest and things like that, well, I had MapQuest. But they were there was a directory of the churches of Christ that they put together. And I remember filling out our entry to that. However, I noticed that there was a designation B for predominantly black congregation. I actually went to one because it was closest when I was traveling. I was welcomed, you know, everybody. It was a little bit different than our order of services. I saw nothing scriptural that went on there. I think there's still a movement in the church where that is kind of preferred. One church, and I'm not really sure how I feel about this. One church that I know of, I was talking to a lady that's part of it, and a predominantly black church had split. And this one was a predominantly white church, but they allowed these members to come there. And one lady told me she thought it was a good thing. She said, this area has long been without a black church and it needs another one. And that's what we are going to probably turn into. She was a white lady that said this. I'm not really sure how I feel about that. Like I said, I'm not really sure how I feel about that either way. She was very positive about the whole thing. But my problem with racism is, I think we continue racism by our culture. I noticed that when the president was picking his cabinet, we all of a sudden became interested with the race and culture of everybody he was picking. I kind of thought that the object of getting rid of bigotry and racism was not to put up those walls and put up those divisions. And instead of worrying about where you need to pick someone who's Hispanic or who is Asian or who is black, that you ought to pick the best person for the job, no matter what their race is. I had this discussion, I think a week before we left, with a group of children of mixed white and black race. I think there were even a couple of Asian children there. And they said, you're entirely right. Why do we keep putting up these walls? And I think our society does it, but I think our churches do it too. I am very, very, during the Civil War, that was the origin of, it's been changed since then, but that was the origin of balconies in church buildings, is that slaves would sit in the balcony and white people would sit on the main floor. And some of these churches are designed so that if you're on the main floor, you cannot look up and see a black face.
Matt and Pat were married in a, I guess it was 150-year-old church or something. One of the first, and it was built. It was really interesting to me. They had gone to the trouble had beautiful windows and things like that.
Mhm.
You go in, and they had the pews were split
Mhm.
different ways, but it was not for black and white. It was for female and male.
Men and women.
The males and females in each pew
Mhm.
could not sit. Now it was cracked and shoved up together. It
Mhm.
just didn't have continuous forward. But then you went up into the balcony.
Mhm.
Upon thought, I liked it because at least everybody's hearing and learning the same things,
Mhm.
regardless of the restrictions. I couldn't really, and I never looked into it too much. If there's a cut down this thing, what does that accomplish? Wild men and women. I mean, it was within a family.
You're not gonna like the answer. Okay, the answer is, and I've seen this too in Savannah. There was a wedding that I did. Riley Nelson and I both did a wedding. Of some members that were baptized here. And they wound up going to Richmond Hill for a while. But anyway, we both did it, and the pews were not like these. They were straight. And there was a partition down the middle to separate at one time men and women, and there was a balcony. Of course, it's in Savannah. It's old, it's pre-Civil War, and it was designed to separate whites and blacks. The balcony.
Yeah, well, see, these weren't. They were specifically for the women of the
Mhm.
family had to sit on whichever side. And obviously, they either could make their own or make a choice because they weren't all just halves, usually.
Mhm.
Different sizes, like if you had less men or less women or something like that.
These were all the same size.
But it was strictly for
Mhm.
the men and the women in each family. They didn't join families.
When I was a young man, this had happened many years ago. But we had a man in our church in Daytona who did not sit with his wife. He sat in the front of the building, and he believed that all the men should do that and say amen at the front. Of course, that's the amen corner kind of thing that they've now appropriated for golf. Yeah, that there has been, it's called gender-centric prejudice in the Lord's church. And honestly, I have battled that my entire career. It is, to me, amazing how our thinking is in this day and time, especially since we've had women on the Supreme Court. We've had a woman vice president now, seems to be doing a lot of the job. And seems to be fairly well accepted by the nation. But, you know, in churches, well, here's my spiel. I did sort of an unofficial research thing about, I kept hearing a phrase. The phrase was, if you added something else, but it was 3 words, just a woman. Okay. Well, she couldn't, you know, if a man did not want a woman to do something, she can't because she is just a woman. So I started kind of paying attention to that phrase every time I heard it. And honestly, I heard it from as many or more women as I did men, because women will use that as a way to get out of doing anything in the church, you know.
I know some of them women.
Well, what we've relegated to our women is teaching of the children and cleaning. And that's it. And honestly, those things are needed But there's much more that is needed even today, because if you look around at our churches, predominantly, there are many more women than there are men. And a lot of this work is going to have to be done by our women. I hope nobody finds out the way we do business meetings here, because I guarantee you
I know.
somebody would say something.
Very true.
Um,
Very, I've heard it and heard it said to me,
mhm,
but, I heard a lot of people when they were discovering Max Lucado that because of what their church did, that they would never read the books again. Personally, I love his books.
he's a great writer.
Any subject.
Mhm.
And I've heard that just because of some of the things, especially with women
Mhm.
and how they did it. Now, I tried to read the thing. It must be 6,000 pages long or something. Did not get finished with it.
He likes to write.
But they had everything they had done and discovered in their discovery of the Bible, however they phrased it. But I just,
Well, if the man
I would
is,
have preferred slaves and and their owners, etc., in the same building, learning the same things.
Mhm.
Because then you're going to bring up your kids that
Mhm.
way, and they all knew slavery wasn't going to last all the time.
Well, it probably wouldn't have lasted another 20 years after the Civil War.
Exactly. So I mean, there
As you
was a
add,
reason.
as a historian, I can tell you, as you add technology to what you do, like tractors and things like that, slavery no longer becomes profitable.
Exactly.
It never worked in manufacturing, never worked in plants. They tried, but it did not work. In fact, there were a group of Southern slaveholders that saw the handwriting on the wall before Civil War
Sure.
and bought land but they were also huge racists, but they bought land in Africa so that these slaves could be transported back to Africa. And they started buying them away and created a foundation. And they actually formed the nation of Liberia. The flag is very similar to ours. And the capital of Liberia is Monrovia. And it's named after President James Monroe of the United States.
I've been up there to where those Monrovians
Mm-hmm.
established in North Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty interesting, actually.
It's
And their settlements.
but obviously there was a group that were right that slavery would not last much longer. But the point I'm trying to make is this here. When we look at the church and we say, well, these are the kinds of people we want in our churches, then we're doing exactly what he's saying here. If we don't want to deal with sinners, no matter how they come, no matter who they are, and if we want to try to think, and this came out Sunday morning, well, it's just some people I can't accept. We got to get away from that. You got to get away from that. I have heard, in another place I was preaching, I was not one, and I don't think I'm either anymore. But one of our elders was talking about a previous minister, and he said, we're never going to hire a Republican preacher again. Republican does not mean a character trait. It just means a simple belief about politics. However, I have noticed in the recent past that this seems to be a way that we think about people is if they're a Democrat or if they're a Republican. And, if you're what I'm not, you're evil. And if you're what I am, you're great. And that's not true. I don't identify with either anymore, I've found. I like a lot of what the Democrats say about choices. You know, that people should be free to make choices in all walks of life as much as they can without infringing on other people's rights. But I like what the Republicans say about fiscal conservatism, about being careful with the way that people's money is spent. Once you tax them, then don't waste it. It used to make me very, very angry when I would see one of these stupid things that Washington would pass, like to grade ketchup or something like that, and it would, the amount of money they sunk into it was equal to more than of the taxes than I will pay in my lifetime. So, you know, but all those things have to leave, and we do have a problem with that here. All those things need to leave our churches.
I have another on the last sentence. He said, I have not come to call the righteous, but the sinners.
Mhm.
Prior to that, understand doctors, healthy, sick,
Mhm.
all of that. Were there a group that were righteous?
Think about it for a minute.
Who knows?
Does that group even exist today?
Well, did it exist then?
No, what
And
are
I
you
couldn't
saying?
quite, because I also didn't know what the word call meant.
Well, if there were such people, they would beat him. Okay? He's not quite saying that there's a group of people that I am ignoring, because it was obvious he called everybody. He wants them to realize the same thing that we say when we say the church is not an art gallery, it's a hospital for sinners. That's what he's saying. He's saying that I am coming to call those who are sinners. The righteous really don't have any need for me to call them, but there really are none. You know, he's calling everyone.
And what does the word call mean in that, such as, you know,
Invite.
he-
But it's stronger than an invite. It's more wholeheartedly invite. Making my life's work the inviting of or calling people to. And he does say elsewhere, if I be lifted up on his crucifixion, I will call all men to myself.
I
It's-
just didn't know if those were the same words even.
Call
If it
is,
meant something different.
well, call does. It's, you have to understand, Greek has 2,200 words, and English has, well, more and more every year. But the last figure I saw was 2,500. Okay, so Greek's going to use the same words for many things. The word for church, if this helps, is ecclesia, which means called out. And people say, oh, well, that's a holy thing. No, it really isn't. When the mob was formed to persecute the Apostle Paul in Thessalonica, I believe, it was called an ecclesia. These are people who are called together for a specific purpose. School has another word for it, but a classroom maybe would be an ecclesia, these people called together. But I kind of like the idea of the church being called simply that, because it's not a special ecclesiastical name. It's people who are called together because they're saved or because of salvation. So that's kind of what it means. It's called in there. So he is giving the criteria for the calling, but he's not. And he's doing the calling, and he's saying, this is, if you're sinners, come to me.
Then you should make up your mind, seeing some of the examples.
And the thing is, if you'll look at this group, he calls everyone. But the only group that seems to be responding to him right now are the tax collectors and sinners.
Right.
The others do not. Now, in verse 14, and this can just be starting this, it's not going to end it, but then the disciples of John, he's going to treat them very, very differently. than the Pharisees and the scribes, because these people legitimately have a question that they want to know the answer to. They do not want to try to trap Jesus in what he says. And you can see the difference in the previous paragraph and the one that begins in 14. Then the disciples of John came to him asking, "Why do we and the Pharisees fast, but your disciples do not fast?" Okay, it's a fair question. It is this was a Jewish, it is also in some Christian denominations a requirement, was fasting. This means going without food. All right, now, he makes it very plain in this passage, in what he's fixing to say, that I don't know if I'll get into it, that is no longer a part of religion, is fasting. However, the Pharisees did teach it. And also, the law of Moses does say it. Usually fasting, however, is for a period of mourning. Jesus himself did it when he was fixing to be tempted of Satan. He fasted. And other times he did as well. But it is a sign of mourning. It seems to have gone the other way now. In this day and time, I've noticed that, and I might be wrong, that most Jews I know, when they have a time of mourning, they eat quite a bit. So I don't know. You're supposed to fast as a kind of a mourning, and that's what he says here. He says the attendants of the groom cannot mourn as long as the groom is with them, can they? But the days will come when the groom is taken away from them, and then they will fast. But now, no one puts a patch of unshrunk cloth on an old garment, for the patch pulls away from the garment, and the worst tear results. Nor do people put new wine into old wineskins. Otherwise, the wineskins burst, and the wine pours out, and the wineskins are ruined. But they put new wine into fresh wineskins, and both are preserved. Well, I think the cloth thing, y'all probably know more than I do about that. If the cloth shrinks, it's going to pull the seams that you patched the old garment with, because it's not going to move. And even if it did, it'd be a worse problem. Now, the new wine in old wineskins, this kind of shows you a couple of things. First of all, this is a much, much different way of making wine that exists today. The only thing they had to put an alcohol content in wine was fermentation. Today they use fermentation and distillation. Distillation will increase the alcohol content in wine. In these days, all they had was fermentation. And the only reason that they did it, now it could make you drunk if you drank quite a bit of it. But the only reason that they could, the number I've seen is they could make it about 6% alcohol. But the reason that you did this is because there was no refrigeration. You had to have some way to preserve what you drank. And in many places, I won't say everywhere, but in many places the water is simply undrinkable, especially in a desert climate like this. So this was the only thing. But now during fermentation, a gas is formed. I've actually seen this happen because we did it in school, when I was in school. A gas is formed and it expands. Well, in a new wineskin, that skin will expand with it. But in an old one that's already been stretched, when it expands, it breaks. That makes sense. That makes sense. Today we would probably use something else. I mean, something that's flexible, like rubber or something. I don't know what they use today other than wine barrels And they store it that way and they bottle it that way and it stays in the barrels for so many years until it completely ferments or whatever it does. I don't really know anything except for this that y'all didn't know because I read it last night. To get the juice out of the grapes, you step on them, and then you do it. And somehow, and I'll quit on this because it's kind of funny. Well, it's not funny, but it's interesting. Because she was an absolute comic genius. In that winemaking, wine stomping scene that Lucille Ball did, and I Love Lucy, which we've all seen, somehow she was almost killed in that. I'm not entirely sure what happened, but she actually was injured during that scene, which is one of the funniest things I think I've seen on television ever. And then when she, as I read this too, that this is the time when she and Desi were very much in love. When she did the Vitamita Vegemin commercial, where she didn't know it had alcohol in it and she got drunk halfway through, said that Desi had to bite his hand to keep from laughing over in the sidelines and ruining the scene because she did it, but that was hilarious too. All right, we'll stop here. But that was something about winemaking I bet you didn't know. What is your invitation song?
113.
Huh?
113.
113. Okay.
My grandmother made wine and they made it in the, sort of like those urns that they made buttermilk.
Mhm.
But it had, instead of the churner that turned, they had the flat.
Mhm.
So that was what squashed the grapes.
Oh, okay.
And it would ferment and you could not, you had to put up several different layers of
Mhm.
cloth to keep it in because it would expand and you had to
Mhm.
redo it every so often because it took a little while to do it.
Yeah, it's supposed to actually take years.
Well, yeah,
Fine wine and stuff.
but getting into the fermentation stage, it took some months.
Mhm. And true wine, I think you only use grapes. I don't think you use anything else.
But she used muscadines, and people think they're grapes, but we know they're not.
No, muscadine wine
That was her primary.
and peach wine or peach wine.
Never had that. But 113.
113. In a couple of minutes, we'll sing the first verse. Great. In a couple minutes, we'll sing the first verse of 113. And if anyone stands to need to respond to the Lord's invitation, you comments together, we stand.
I need thee every hour, most gracious Lord. No tender voice like thine can peace afford. I need thee, oh, I need thee. Every hour I need thee. Oh, bless me now, my Savior. I come to thee.
I am in desperate need of prayer. Whoever's asking. I am in need of prayer.
Almighty God, we come to you tonight. Sister Vicky said she is in need of prayer. Please, whatever is bothering her or whatever is troubling her, please put your healing hand, your comforting hand upon her. We ask, Heavenly Father, that you'll be with us. We ask, Father, that you'll dismiss us from this place, but never from thy presence, and you forgive us when we sin. We trust in to pray. Amen.
Amen.
You want to talk about what's going on, or you want to leave it
Uh,
bad?
I find myself, I don't want to behave, for a kind way to put it. I find myself not reacting to what's going on with my mother very well at all, because my brother has isolated her, and each day of the last couple of weeks I find some other horror that I don't want to know about. And I just did not, every day I have to pray, and I don't want to be what I want to be.
That kind of situation does take its toll on families in many ways.
It is terrible.
Mhm.
And she has kind of precipitated it to get her way for a while. And I just, when people tell me lies, I have never been okay. And I find myself wanting to get revenge. And I really go to the point of planning it, so I don't want to be that way. I'm having a difficult time
I can say you are.
just remaining.
And having been through that twice, yes, I understand. But I'm not gonna make this about me, this is your thing. Well, honestly, that is a pet peeve of mine. And it still happens here when, somebody brings up a prayer request. Have you noticed that somebody else will say, oh yeah, many years ago, that same thing happened? Well, it's not about me. This is about somebody else, that they are talking about, and
And a lot of this kind of shakes my childhood, that some of the things, and so it's not all the time, but most of the time I stay mad at them. So my mother is in some kind of crazy hospice. I even hesitate to ask from my relatives and stuff, ask for prayer, because they're not telling all the truths of everything. So,
unfortunately that doesn't happen.
and that's alien to me too, because I just always want everybody's prayers all the time for anything that's happening within my family, and now I don't even know what to say. So it's taking its toll on me.
I can say so.
And my sleep and all that kind of stuff, so I need prayer. That's the best I can say. Is
I would
just
say if I
need
can
prayer.
help, let me know, but I know there's no way I could do, because I've been down that road.
Well, if you say stuff, you go down the road, you feel like tattletale.
Or golf. Yeah.
And I don't want to
And,
be in that place.
if it does help to talk it over with somebody who will keep it to themselves, that's fine, but
Yeah.
sometimes it does help to say it out loud.
I have a couple of cousins, and they say things to me that are good,
Mm-hmm.
and they're praying for me too. So that helps, and they know I don't have to explain a lot to get to the point I'm trying to make to them. So
you've spoken with them already?
well, yes.
Okay. That's good.
But it's ongoing. Like I say, I found out another thing today, and he wants to leave my mother alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I just found that out today. He wants, because he's got a mini vacation coming up.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't want to give it up. So, how far do I go on that? What do I do if my mother agrees?
Mm-hmm.
Those are, to me, just not answerable questions. I don't really know. I pray that God makes it really plain to me, though.
Yeah, and,
If you'll just make it really plain to me.
I've been in that situation where you have to just say, God, I really don't even know what to pray for.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Well, I've been there a lot lately.
Well, see, some of these things are kind of once in a lifetime thing for me. And it really makes a difference not having